Hi there, everybody. Welcome back to my channel where we play, experiment, have fun. It's all in an art journal on mixed media or watercolor paper like this book, and it's just paper. So the purpose here is to learn a few tricks and to learn to let loose, go with your intuition, get lost in the zone and just play. So speaking of play, I love to do mark making. It's my very first layer straight onto the paper, and these are just random scribbles and marks, pressing softly mostly, and they may or may not show up later, but sometimes little fragments of them do, and that's the joy of it. I do lots and lots of layers, and I like how little things from previous layers get revealed. That's the fun of my technique. So I'm going to clamp the top corner because the book's getting quite thick there and it doesn't want to lay flat. And I'm going to protect the other side as well. And along that center seam there, that's an area where if you add a lot of wet paint and water, it can seep through there to the back. So I try to be mindful of that and keeping the pages behind clean. So that's why I do a protector. And those are my mat. There's a pea mat from my dog supply that I cut up into rectangles to use as page protectors underneath. And they're working great because one half is absorbent and one half is waterproof. So that suits all of my needs. So I'm giving a very light coating of matte medium. What I'm doing is sealing in the mark making, and right there it's smeared a little bit with that orange pigment, and that's okay. I don't mind that. So I'm pressing down there and letting it smudge. Who cares? This is just my underlayer, but I am getting a light coating of matte medium. What that does is it protects that original paper, which is fragile. So because I like to use a lot of ink and paints to stain my pages, it gets very wet. So the more I can protect that paper, the better. I've got this wonderful, huge stencil from Joggles. I'll put it in the notes. Elizabeth St. Hilaire does these wonderful 9x12 stencils. I like buying 9x12 because I love when images can go right off the page. I like that they're so big that you can take just fragments of them. You don't have to use the whole stencil as is. I'm using molding paste is what my tube is called. It's also known and labeled in many times as modeling paste. So you'll hear me sometimes say one and then the other. It's the same thing. In this case, my modeling paste is going to dry semi-transparent, semi-opaque. So that means that odd little bits of those pencil crayons may still show through, especially depending on how thick the layer of paste is when I'm finished. I'm using a smaller silicone paint spreader to move it around the stencil, the mask. This is actually a mask area, and I'm smudging it around, and then I will grab a bigger one and flatten it all out evenly so that there's a more even coat of this across the page. There's the bigger one, and whenever I see I've gone over the edge, try to wipe that right away before I lift the stencil. Just makes it easier than trying to do it later. So I'm giving a good scrape across. I'm going to do the middle flower there in two parts because I've got a very big rounded hump in the middle of the spread, and it's collected very heavily in the center there, as you see. So I'm going to have to scrape that out. I'm going to have to let the left side dry, and then I will add the right side. And so this particular spread is taking a couple of days because I did a lot of drying between layers, just for the modeling paste before I even got started. And that's okay. It's good to be patient. I have a goal this time. The only goal I have is I'm using this stencil. I have no idea where I'm going. At this point, I don't even know what colors I'm going to grab. All intuitive. It really depends. I could have planned my colors yesterday, and today I would have felt something different. I do a lot of intuitive gut feelings from my paintings. I like to let them tell me what they want to reveal, and then I coax that out of it. And also what you've noticed with my videos, I like to talk through my process. I like to tell you what's going on in my head for the choices that I make, instead of having you just watch what I do. I like teaching. I like empowering people to learn and grow, and that's why I have this channel. I have it for two reasons. The other is I believe very much in the power of mindfulness and getting away from your day and having moments for yourself. And that's what this is. And that's why I've said in my promos and everywhere I can, I let you know you do not have to be an expert artist. Beginners welcome, because I have not in any of my videos yet, and I've done a lot, I've not taught anybody how to draw. I'm teaching how to use tools like this to create something in your spare time. In your playtime, I hope you call it. And I hope you start scheduling time out to do this more often. And it's really wonderful if you're going through an illness like I have gone through it, or if you've got surgery or pain, you're recuperating and you need time out. It's a really good way of getting lost in the moment, not thinking about anything. So here's the second side. And because it was so thick in the middle, it didn't really take the stencil as well as it could have. So I'm using a silicone paintbrush, which I bought a set of these because they're wonderful for doing just exactly this. I think they're meant for clay, for doing engraving in clay, but they work wonderful for mixed media and modeling paste. So I'm just using the point of it to take away any bulk of modeling paste, especially at the center, because it's just going to crack and it's going to make it hard for the book to open. And I'm using the flat side of it now just to spread the thickness of that modeling paste around very lightly on the surface so that I can mimic the paste that it would have looked like if it would have gone on flat and beautiful when I did it with the mask. And it's okay, it's a little bit bumpy in the middle there, a little bit wonky. I don't mind that. Now I've got another silicone paintbrush, and I'm using the flat part of it just to spread that around even more so that it gives the impression that that's how I pressed it from the stamp in the first place. And it's working to a degree. I don't mind if it's not perfect. None of these projects I do are perfect. Most of them are happy surprises along the way, and that's what I love about this. And if you're a very rigid painter or colorer and you don't think you've got looseness in you, these are great videos to get you to reach that goal. And it's not as if you have to. I'm not telling you shouldn't learn to be a good painter, but I'm trying to show you that you can just get lost in the moment, create something of value to you in a very easy way. And I have lots of stencils and stamps, but I tend to get my favorites out all the time, and this is definitely one of my top 5 favorites. So I'm just pushing the modeling paste around so that I fill in this entire rose on the right. And then the bigger paint spreaders so that I can flatten all of that. And anywhere where I've gone over the edge like there, over the edge of the detail on the mask, I can wipe that away with my finger before I lift it up. And there you go, that's a pretty good stencil. And before you let it get too dry, spray water on it and wipe it back. Or if you're going to do a lot of stenciling, get a big tray with water in it and soap and stick them all in there, and then they won't stick. Here's a reason why you should do that. The stencil I've got now, I don't know if it's called Bubbles or what, but I used that many, many months. I think I've had that a couple of years. And as you can see, I was probably gel printing and didn't have the time, take the time, I should say, to clean it off after. And what happens is I get areas behind the mask that have bumps from previous paint, and it's leaving big gaps. And so it was odd textures, and it didn't do that impression very well with the circles. So I'm going to try that again. But this is the reason why you want to keep your masks clean. I don't mind how random it looks, but it does make it, what I'm trying to say is the space between the paper and the top of that mask is higher, so you get thicker coating of modeling paste in there, and then when you lift it back, it's a little messier like that. And that's okay. So what I'm doing now, so I'm wiping away with my finger where it interfered with the rose stencil, because I want that rose stencil to stand out right to the edge there. And then I'm just patting down wherever I don't want some of those uglier looking dots. Because my purpose of the second stencil is for those bubbles to complement the flower stencil but not compete with it too much. So I'm just trying to wipe away anything that impedes on the petals of that rose, like there. These tools are wonderful for that. And I'm coaxing it around a little bit. So if you don't want to wait so long for dry time between layers of modeling paste, you can get the hair dryer out or blow dryer. I always press the button that keeps it cold, and you can blow it dry and coax it. I'd say if you're going to use the blow dryer, you could probably get within 5 minutes have these dried down enough that you could do another layer beside and not touch any wet, sopping wet modeling paste. So it's your call. In my case, yesterday and today, I did a lot of this, and then I walked away, did things, and came back. So I'm trying to get a continuation of random bubbles, but there's of course there's a margin, a border around that stencil, so I can't get it right to the edge. There's always going to be a gap there, but that's okay. I don't mind that. Later on, when I start adding pigments and paint and have that flow all around this page, I'm going to forget, because this is white on white, I'm going to forget where a lot of this detail is, and that's the happy surprise later on. Where the paint goes in and around all these grooves is the fun part, and that's coming up next. So I like what I've got going here, and I'm thinking about the colors now. And it's time to experiment and play, and I call it experiment because that's what we do. So this is good and dry. It's the next day. And I found these metallics when I went to the art store yesterday. Not sure if I'll use them in this one or not, but I think it could be cool, and I think it could be complementary to the colors. What I want to do is do very pale pink, very, very pale colors at first, because if I end up finishing with the metallics, and I would finish because of the shininess and the metallic of them, I want to do that as a last stage. So what I want to do is just find a really pale pink. So I'm doing my Quinacridone Magenta mixed with water. I'm going to spray the page first, and that way when I apply this watered down color, it'll go even lighter, and it'll dry lighter than it goes down as well. So already you can see the fun of where the paint goes into those grooves. And the more fluid and watered down, or the more fluid the texture of the paint or ink you put down, the more it will go right and shoot right into those channels and grooves and follow a path. If I did this with heavier paste, it wouldn't move around and flow into the grooves as much as it's doing now. So that's a lot of fun. I really love this part of the process. And you can never predict exactly how it's going to go. It really depends on how watery it is. It depends on the position and how you move the book around to give it tilt so that it would encourage paint to flow. There's a lot of variables, but it's just fun to experiment and try. So this time I wanted to show you that I'm not always using high flow acrylics. I can use inks as well. They're even a little bit more wet and fluid. So we'll see what happens. This is a very bright, vibrant orange. It's quite a bit like my Indian yellow that I love so much. So I thought I'd give it a try, just to show you that you can use inks as well. I'm giving it an extra spray of water so that this will go down lighter and again go into those channels and grooves. Very complementary color to the first magenta. And you can see again how it wants to settle. And wherever the modeling paste was the thickest, and then it's got the deeper grooves, that's where you see these heavier pigments hitting. So the darker the orange and the darker the pink, those are in channels that are really, really deep. So I'm giving it another crisscross pattern, left to right with the pink and right to left with the yellow. I'm going to clamp down that corner and let it sit flat. And I've got to dab that middle section of the spread again with paper towel so that the ink doesn't go into there. And I'm doing that right now. And I don't want to do much more. I just want to coax a little more of this yellow and see what happens as it goes into these grooves. I can already see on the left spread how fun that orange is flowing right there on the left, flowing into the pink. And that's a lot of fun, and it blends with the pink, becomes a third color, and it goes into those grooves even more. So I'm liking what's happening there, and I'm encouraging it with a little bit more. That's a lot of fun. These are the surprises that I love. So much fun. It'll dry and perhaps look even different than this because it'll find the channels that it wants to go into. So it'll be a nice surprise to go back to this when it's good and dry and see what I'm left with. But again, I'm trying to keep things subtle at first to see where we can go. So much fun. So I'm going to dab that middle seam again, and we'll go from there. So here you can see it dried so much lighter than before. There it was before it dried, and now it's a lot lighter, but that's okay. It's nice and dreamy and soft. I'm quite liking the direction this is going. I want to make a little bit of purple, and if you've done any kind of painting at all, you know that pink and blue mixed together creates purple. So I'm starting off with just a bit of blue, and I'm going to test it on a scrap piece of paper until I find that's more lilac. I want to get it deeper purple than that. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to make a purple but stay within my family of pink and yellow, and not go too bizarre, because later on I want to have an accent of blue. So for now, making this purple is still very complementary to what I've already got down on the page. So these are my main colors. So I've got a little more blue in it now, and it's a little more purple, but I'm going to add a little bit more blue again. Give that a good mix. It made just a subtle bit of difference, and that's okay. Because I want to do my transparent blue as an accent and contrast, I wanted, like I say, to keep this purple a little more complementary and not jump out so much of the page. So far I'm liking the effect. Just coaxing it into some of those grooves. It's very, very wet. That's why it's going to settle a little differently than when we put it down. Keep dabbing that center there so that it doesn't leak through to the back. And while it's still a bit wet, I'm dabbing some of that back to keep the effect a little more subtle. I can always go darker later, but I want to keep things subtle at this point. So now I'm going to add my blue. This is what I call my contrast, my real accent, my impact, if you will. And usually when I do that, it's usually in 3 spots through the spread. And all 3 spots I like to keep a little bit different sizes, different effect. But as long as I've got that blue traveling around my spread in 3 places, I'm going to dab some of that back. Right now I'm just putting it down. So the reason why I use 3 places and I spread it around is to help the eye move around the page. When I want that contrast, I want it to be picked up subtly across the spread and not just in one spot. So I'm liking that. They're all going to end up being slightly different effects, but the blue is there. Very wet. I'm going to keep dabbing that center, and then I'm going to let this dry by air. There it is, completely dry. The blue accent I'm really liking how that turned out. It's very subtle and dreamy. The whole spread is subtle and dreamy. And because I use this obvious flower stencil, I've definitely got a theme here of roses, even though I don't normally, as you know, my abstracts normally don't have a real object or subject. This, you can't deny the fact that it's a bouquet of roses. So I'm going to go with it. When I do natural and landscapes and things like that, I still have an aspect of abstract. And so I'm really happy the direction where this is going. What I want to do is, I was just trying to wipe some of that back and see where I could go with this. This is what I would call my mid painting. This is not finished by any means, and it's not an underpainting. We're sort of mid-stage here. I usually have mark making, then I have an underpainting, then I have a mid-stage, And I was just showing you the before and afters of it before it dried. It's completely dry now, and I'm trying to decide what to do. Before I go any further, I want to protect all of this work that I've done so far so that when I do other things later, if I don't like it and I spray it off, I don't want to affect this mid painting because I'm very fond of this mid painting. I don't want to lose it. This mid painting will still become an underlayer, but I do want to protect it exactly as it is. This is exactly what I pictured when I started, was doing an overall color of mixed sherbet style colors. And what I'm deciding after doing quite a few spreads with that modeling paste that's semi-transparent, I find it dries quite gray in areas, and I didn't want that, and I'm worried, like the last painting, I had trouble with it being too gray and cloudy and dirty looking. So what I want to do right now is make a glaze of white with matte medium to make a very subtle white glaze and bring this back a bit and see if I can keep this page bright. I am worried about those petals where the thick modeling paste is. It's still quite gray. Not sure how I'm going to deal with that, but for now I just want to soften the entire page, the entire spread, with a glaze of white. A glaze to me is always a semi-transparent. So again, I mix that with about 1/3 white, fluid white, and 2/3 matte medium. That's pretty much what I use most of the time, and I'm eyeballing it, but most of the time that's how I make my white glaze. Now I've got my fluid white right out of this bottle, and what I want to do, again, you can see very clearly all those big petals, they're very gray and dirty looking. So what I want to do is go in and top them up with this white, fluid white, which is no longer the glaze, it's fluid white, which is fairly milky. It's not completely flat white, it's semi-opaque. But what I am doing, as you can see, I'm taking all those areas where the petals are quite obvious with the modeling paste, and it's quite gray, and I'm going to make them crisp white, and then later on I can glaze colors over top. So what I'm trying to do is bring back the look of the white paper, because that modeling paste did alter it. I think from now on I'm going to switch. I'm going to go and buy some modeling paste that's white and not semi-transparent and see if I can get better effects, because I'm just not happy with what that does. I don't like dirty, messy smudges. So you can see how this is really popping forward all these areas of white with the petals, and that would look really nice too as a finish if you like. But I'm not finished. I want to do more glazing, more intensity of color, and this is just a start. All I'm doing is giving an underpainting of white so I can start with fresh, bright colors again. So I'm just working my way around the page. I've sped this up slightly. But as you can see, these are, and all of these areas that are showing up white right now, these are the uppermost points, if you will, of the modeling paste. They stick up the highest on the page. Sorry for the head. The older you get, the more you have to lean in to see those close-up spots. I couldn't zoom in and get rid of the head because it would have covered too much of everything. So I could zoom in to show you exactly each area that I'm doing, but I'd like you to watch from a distance more to see the effect that that makes. It's very, very effective. And I already know that by doing this was the right thing. It's going to make this a lot cleaner, less dirty when I put the next color down. This third rose here on the right is the largest. It's got the biggest areas of flat rose petals. So I want to make sure I do all of that. I have fun at this stage. You know, I'm not contriving anything. I pretty much know where I'm going. The painting has told me what it wants to be, and now I just have to trust that. So I'm just mechanically going through the motion of painting in all these high areas, and that's a very mindful technique for me. I get lost in my zone, not thinking about anything, and I'm just like meditating at this point. Really, really enjoy this process. I'm smudging away wherever I find I've missed it, and it's not a big deal if you miss a little bit. It's not that kind of perfection I'm looking for. I like things to be random and organic. And I like how these roses sit in different locations on the page. On the right, it's going off the page. On the left, I'm aware that I've got a space there that the rose is not going off the left, but I will do something there to balance the effect. Right now, I'm just topping up these whites. I'm happy I made this decision. I want to bring a little bit more down here on the left because I missed it, and I want to keep the eye moving across the page. My abstracts are all about color movement and energy, and you're going to see a lot of that. So right now, as I do this, I'm picking out areas where I want to bring the eye to a particular spot. So now it's dry. I've decided I'd like to bring out a brighter blue down here because it looked a little bit dirty. Now it's going on pretty dark, but I will wipe that back. But I just want to have a prettier blue. My accent in blue, I don't want it to disappear and look a lot like the purple, which it's doing on the top and in this area here. So in doing this mixture, which was previously made with fluid white and my transparent blue, very same blue as I did before, watered down, and I'll add a little bit up there just to balance. But yes, it was looking a little bit dirty, and I wanted this to be a brighter blue. There we go. That's already working. And then just a little hit of it over here. Remember, all my three blue areas are different. They're completely different shapes and patterns. So I'm going to wipe a little back. This is a wet wipe with rubbing alcohol on it. And again, a lot of my technique is to put stronger color and then wipe away. And you might think that's wasteful, but it's the wiping away that reveals things from previous layers. And that's my technique. I like how cloudy and dreamy this looks. We're off to a good start. This is definitely well on its way, and I know what I want to do next. I like the crisscross. I like the movement of the eye across the page. Everything's dry now. Look at that interest in detail and bumps and patterns. That's fun. I've got patterns from the bumps, and I've got patterns from where I put color down and wiped away. So this is my purchase from the art store yesterday, was these metallic acrylic inks. And I really want that to be a bold impact. Blue was my contrast, but this gold is going to be the real impact of the page. Now it's going to go on very heavy, but bear with me, we'll go in stages here. So I'm going to go directly out of the bottle and dab it on with the blotter, and it goes on beautiful and bright. I wanted this to be bright and happy. It's not a deep gold, it's bright. I think it's called bright, iridescent bright gold. And I want this to move across the spread. And I want it to move across from right to left and fill in some of those channels and crevices. And I'm just coaxing it along with my finger, but because I have such a bump in the middle of the book, I have to do it like this. I have to stop and start. And I know that I have to spray a little bit of water to help that move, but I didn't want it to move much more. That's exactly what I wanted. I will add more gold, but my purpose was to bring gold from right over to the left side of the page, and right there where I'm wiping that far right rose, that's going off the page. So I want this gold to travel off the page onto the left, but in a different way than through a rose. I want it to travel off to the left in streams and dribbles. That's the abstract artist in me coming out. I'm going to go on. The best way to get fluid paint to move across the page is to tilt it. And I love having fun with, I couldn't plan exactly how that was going to show up, but I do like the balance that's going in. To encourage that more, I'm getting it right out of the dropper and highlighting those three streams there. So definitely the eye is moving from the right of the page off to the left. I didn't want to have a rose going off to the left. I wanted this to be asymmetrical. So far, so good. And what I want to do up there is spread that gold up. I like the gold to be treated differently around the page. And so where it's going off in strong dribbles on the left, it's traveling up the page to the top right as just a flat finish. I'd say out of the entire book so far, this is the most obvious theme. And I don't mind. Like I say, it's not what I usually do, picking a theme. But I'm quite happy to do this delicate, very feminine, soft spread. It's all about exploring. I'm probably going to do more things like this because it's not my usual technique. I mean, the technique is mine, but it's not my usual goal is to do flowers and things like that. But I'm having so much fun with this, and I'm really liking how bright and cheerful it is. I'd like to do more of it. And I think it'd be nice in a large painting on the wall. So now everything is dry. I let it air dry. I went away and came back. I'm going to remove some of that gold. I wanted it to be across the page, but I didn't want it to be on the top surface. I like to do layers of depth. So in taking rubbing alcohol and rubbing it quite strongly across the flowers, I'm removing the very uppermost layers of those petals. I'm not touching the gold that went down into the lines. They're staying down in the background, and I'm making the petals jump forward into the foreground. I'm happy with this. It's what I wanted. Again, I wanted gold everywhere, but I didn't want it to be a smudge of gold, because gold, when you move it around the page, could be so strong. I just wanted to shoot it back a bit and make it more subtle, more dreamy. So you can see that it's creating more depth. I'm bringing those flower petals to the surface. And I'm spraying water overall to clean it because the rubbing alcohol makes the page sticky. But what really surprised me is how reactive that gold was when I sprayed water. I had to press really hard when I was rubbing the rubbing alcohol, but now that I'm just gently wiping off this page with water, it removed a lot of that paint. But I'm happy with that because it's giving me more flower petals to bring forward. So what I want to do is have the bottom left color and the bottom right. I want those colors to move from the corner of the page into the flower. I'm really experimenting here. I've got an idea in my mind, and I want to see if this will work. And all of this right now is so that the eye of the viewer will move around the page. And look how fun that is. This is where I bring a little bit of depth and brightness to it. So I've got out my Nicolazo gold, which was complementary to that bottom left color that was already happening. And I'm trying to do a dreamy surface of gold, Nicolazo gold around that petal. But I want to concentrate in the very center of these roses to be a strong concentration and hit of color. So I'm fanning that out, but trying to keep it strong in the middle of the flower petal. Keeping it dreamy and then strong in the middle. Reminds me a bit of petunias at the middle of the bud. And now I want to bring the pink, the magenta, in the top flower. It's very dreamy on the left, and as it hits the flower, I want it to be a little more obvious. I'm going to water that down because that magenta is very, very strong out of the bottle. There's so much pigment in it. I was testing it on that scrap on the side. So I want to fan it out, so I'm bringing the eye towards the flower, but having the flower and the background pink on the top left of the spread to talk to each other. I want it to look like one flowed into the other. And again, stronger in the very bud part of that flower, which in this case is the top, the right there. And then coaxing it around a bit. So far, this is what I imagined, and it's working. And over here, I don't want to bring the purple out. I want to keep this bright and cheerful and happy, and I want to bring back that orange. Look how vibrant that is. It's just stunning. I love that. So I'm coaxing that around. It's a bigger flower. It occupies a bigger space, and I like that all three flowers have a different space occupied on the page. And then right in the middle, I want it to be stronger again. So I'm creating flow with these flowers so that they become a bouquet and not separate items. Really happy with that. And then coaxing a little bit more magenta. What I'm doing now is making sure that all three colors have the same value and intensity. So I had to add a little bit to the pink to match the other two colors. And I might wipe a little bit of that back because it's a bit bolder. The values of that pink are much stronger. And I think it'll dry lighter, so I thought, okay, let's just see. So I'll add more nickel azul gold in the flower bud there. And a little bit more off to the left so that it brings the eye off to the left of the page. Because I've got the right rose going off the page, I need this color to go off to the left page. I'm really delighted with this. I'm going to dab back just enough of that magenta so that it's not so strong. I don't want it to dominate. I want it to balance with the other two colors. This is so much movement. This is so fun. So all those three spots there are where I want the strongest hit of color. So I needed to add a little bit more of the orange right in the middle. And then I fanned it out a little bit to go off to the right. Happy with this a lot. There's the flow, and the pink was starting to get lost. It was flowing from the left to the middle. I want it to, the effect of the pink to move down that side of the spread and down off the page a little bit. Not quite off the page, but towards the bottom. So in order to do that, I'm doing it with little dots. And so twofold. It's bringing the eye from the top left to the middle down to the bottom here, but it's doing it with a completely different pattern from the rest of the spread, which to me creates interest, creates levels of depth. These magenta dots now are going to float into the top surface of the spread, and I like that a lot. So fun. I don't want to overwork it. Do a few at a time, and then I kind of take a look and think. Yeah. And I like how those dots are disappearing behind that white petal. They're not going over top of the petal. That rose right there, that rose is going over top, and these are disappearing in behind. So happy with this. This has turned into such a surprise today. So that left and right area now balances. And here's the result. I love it. I like using the metallic on this one. I'm showing you a little bit of action here so you can see that metallic in motion. So much fun. It really complements these beautiful soft colors. I'm really happy with it. I think I'll do more metallics in the future because they are a lot of fun. I'm happy to have this spread in my art journal. I'm going to be very proud to display this on the shelf when it's finished. And I do take a lot of joy in picking those books up and leafing through them, or use it as a tabletop book. So much fun. Thank you for joining me. I hope to see you soon.